Before we begin, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that we're gathered on the traditional lands of Treaty 7 and that Banff National Park also covers Treaty 6 and 8. These lands are home to the Earhare Nakota Nations, Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Goodstoney, the Blackfoot Confederacy, including the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina Nation, the Métis Nation of Alberta, and many others whose stories and connections to this place run deep. As someone who is so fortunate to call this place home, I recognize that the ability to live, work, and enjoy these incredible landscapes comes from a history that has had real impact on Indigenous peoples through displacement, loss of access, and broken relationships. We're grateful to be here today, and we carry a responsibility to keep learning, to listen to Indigenous voices, and to do our part in building relationships that honor both the land and the people who've always been its caretakers. Welcome to Between Peaks, the podcast where we explore the people, ideas, and stories shaping life in the Bow Valley. I'm Nancy Dadalt. Today's guest is someone who's spent his life building systems, communities, and opportunities. The Honourable Ken Hughes has led at every level as a Member of Parliament, Alberta's Minister of Energy and Municipal Affairs, and as the founding chair of Alberta Health Services. He's also an entrepreneur, a board leader, and an tireless champion for community. Ken now calls Canmore home, where he serves on the Banff Canmore Foundation's Board of Directors, and he also chairs the BCF Fund Development and Engagement Committee. His work here is about legacy, helping grow the endowment and ensuring that generosity in this valley is something that lasts for generations. In this conversation, we'll talk about what drives Ken's commitment to community giving, what it means to build a living legacy, and how this leadership journey from public service to philanthropy continues to shape life in the Bow Valley. Ken, welcome. The last time I saw you was at a community foundation over at the Canada House.
Yes.
And we shared some great stories, so it's great to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Let's start with a few questions.
Sure.
When you look back on your career from Parliament to provincial leadership, what values have guided your work?
Well, it's actually several careers, and the consistent factors, I think, are that I see contributing to the community is the price of citizenship. The price of citizenship is that you should, if you're able to, if you have the capacity, if you have the time, if you have the motivation and the community to support you, is to help ensure that you're contributing. Lots of people talk about giving back. I don't talk about giving back because I think it's actually something that is ingrained in your daily life. That is how you do stuff.
What experiences most shaped you in terms of that, and in terms of that? It almost feels like it's an inherent quality and something that in your DNA as opposed to anything else.
Yeah, it's kind of in my DNA. I think it came from my, my parents' view of the world, and their parents' view of the world. My grandfather was in the British Navy as a young person in the 1800s. So that goes back a long way of, being part of contributing and being part of something bigger. And my mother, I grew up on a ranch in southern Alberta. My mother was always very active in the community and it would usually be through the church or other community organizations. But also politics was a thread as well. My dad had been involved in politics as a young man in England and then in Alberta when he came to Alberta in the late 1920s, early 30s, when, Alberta politics was pretty frothy and interesting. It seldom isn't, actually, but that's the history. It's like sitting around the kitchen table. I'm the youngest of 6 kids, sitting around the kitchen table, large family.
No distractions like we have today.
Yeah. Well, they'd be different. There'd be like the horse got out, go catch the horse. But there would be, you'd be aware of what was going on in the community because they were talking about it. And they knew they had friends and knew people who were more active in the community.
That real sharing, that connection together.
You're part of a community. You're part of something greater than just your own little pod of humans.
You've been recognized, and for me, this is really huge. You've been recognized as an honorary chief of the Bagani First Nation. What does that honor mean to you personally?
Well, it means a lot to me as well. At the time, and I still think in many ways I didn't deserve it, but I was the right person in the right place. So in 1988, at age 34, I was elected to the House of Commons. And I thought, you know what, there are very few people who come to public life like that with the background of having gone to school with a lot of kids from Stoney Dakota, Eden Valley community. But more importantly and more influential in my worldview was my mother's relationships with the elders. And they would stop by and visit on the ranch, and they'd have tea and visit every once in a while. And that informed me. And in fact, one of the elders, old Paul, we called him old Paul, he actually rounded up a lot of people to support me when I ran. And it wasn't for Ken Hughes. He didn't know Ken Hughes' mom to speak of, but it was Mary Gardner's little boy, Kenny, was running, and we're going to support him.
Community again.
Community, completely. And so, I had that background, and I thought, well, I should try and see if there's it was an endearing, the Indigenous, non-Indigenous relationship was an enduring characteristic of Canada from first contact, and not a happy one for a lot of people. And so I thought, well, let's try and figure out if there's a way to make a contribution here. And so I volunteered to serve on the Aboriginal Affairs Committee. I quickly became chair, and we did 5 unanimous all-party reports. I had really good allies and supporters on all sides of the House, the NDP and the Liberals, and I was progressive conservative. And we could work together to accomplish some good work, including through Oka. Oka was the most contentious moment in Canadian history since the 1880s, where there were actually shots fired. It was a very unhappy time for a lot of people. And I convinced the government of the day, the Prime Minister's office and the House Leader, that we could have hearings that would have meaningful impact, and that we could extract some good public policy out of this otherwise very difficult time in Canadian history. And we did. We did some tremendous work there.
Ken, for our listeners, would you be able to describe quickly what the Oka situation was in that day?
Yeah, it was the summer of 1990, and there was a dynamic going on in the community of Oka where the municipality, settlers, wanted to develop a gold bars. No, in Quebec. In Quebec, between Montreal and Ottawa, and the local municipality thought it'd be a good idea to develop a golf course. And the local First Nation said, "Oh, wait a minute, that's our traditional land, and we see it as our traditional land as a result of treaty that we signed that has not been honored." And it led to blockades. It led to a really disruptive summer for a lot of people in Montreal. Like people had to drive 3 hours to get to work instead of 30 minutes in some cases for like weeks on end. The Canadian Army was called in support of civil power, which was a hard thing for a Quebec premier to do. Bourassa was the premier, and Mulroney was the prime minister. And it was very contentious. But the fact was, there were little Okas all the way across Canada that could have emerged as well. And I was chair of the Aboriginal Affairs Committee. And then so I convinced the government that they should do hearings, and we did. And one of those recommendations that emerged was to establish a specific claims commission, which opines upon the validity of specific claims. And a specific claim is simply the interpretation of a treaty. And so it's a quasi-judicial process that you have an answer that is right or wrong, or you can get to the right answer. And prior to that, that process didn't exist. And so this has led to hundreds of claims being resolved across Canada between Canada and the respective First Nations, including Siksika, which the Blackfoot community east of Calgary was part of my constituency. I know that they had been hard done by because they didn't have their timber rights that they were allocated, which were now in a national park, Banff National Park. They didn't have a lot of the land that they were originally allocated. It's a large reserve, very populous community. That led to a settlement 2 years ago where the Prime Minister came out and delivered a check for $1.4 billion.
Yeah, there's lots more work to be done in that area.
Lots more work to be done, but you know what? There's a lot of people who have done a lot of work to help lay the groundwork for real reconciliation in the relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Canadians.
Thanks, Ken. I'd like to talk a little bit about living legacy. And through your fund, the Hughes Fund at the Banff Kenmore Foundation, about giving back someday, but doing it now, and while you can see the impact. Can you tell me what inspired you to set up this family fund with Banff Kenmore Foundation?
Well, I thought I better walk the talk. Having joined the board.
Yeah.
And
so you did this following
joining the board, that here's a way to contribute. Here's a way to be a bigger part of contributing to the Banff Kenmore Foundation. And, it's not going to be the biggest fund. It's just going to be one of many in the community that is doing work in the community. That we can have the conversation with the foundation every year and say, we've got a few $1,000s or whatever that is generated as a result of the endowment. How do we want to allocate this year? Where's the greatest need? My wife Denise and I have, we have some priorities that we'd like to see over time. One being, supporting development, capacity development within First Nations. One of which is supporting initiatives at the Y, where they're creating a safe space for families that need it. And we wanted to be able to do that over time. We'd like to do that in the communities in which we live, which we've lived in High River. We live on Salt Spring Island for a few months every year. We live here in the Bow Valley most of the time. So it's those kinds of initiatives that it's a bit of an open book, and it's getting things started. It's a signal to our 3 adult children that, being part of the community and contributing and finding ways to do it is important, and that, they're going to have to pay attention in due course.
Merit, yeah.
So it's all of that.
It's back to that kitchen table.
It's back to the kitchen table.
Mm-hmm. Ken, what makes local philanthropy so powerful? What can it do that large systems or even governments can't do?
Yeah, it can be fine-tuned to address real local needs. And it can, through the foundation, you can allocate a few $1,000s to a project that might lift somebody from where they're kind of getting by to where they actually have greater capacity to be a more contributing member of the community. And so it's that ability to actually know what's going on in the community.
Which the foundation has.
Which the foundation completely has. And which no provincial or federal program could ever touch.
Right. And an element of being nimble, too.
Very nimble, yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Why do you believe community foundations like Banff Kenmore Foundation are such important vehicles for that kind of giving?
Well, it's because they're so close to the community. It's because they have a read on what's going on in the community. Like every community is different. Every community has similar themes of issues that in Canada today. We have housing shortages. We have domestic violence. We have mental poverty. And we have mental health issues where people are having struggle to pull themselves out of that and need a bit of help to make it through the next hours or day or week. So that's the power is that the community is close. The community foundations are close to that, and they understand that, and they can struggle with the struggle of figuring out how to help.
Right.
It's never. There's no cookie cutters in this business. There are to some extent on some of the bigger issues, but often you have to be very creative about how you approach it.
And that's unique to every place.
Exactly. Yeah.
For those who are listening to our podcast, I think there's a little bit of a myth that this is something that people do later in life, or that they don't have enough, or they're too busy. What would you say to encourage them to start giving sooner?
Well, it's never too early, and it's never too late either. But
That's great, Rita.
But actually, again, it comes back to my sense that it's about this is the price of being a citizen, is being engaged and doing your small bit, just $25. But if it's $5, that's okay, and it helps collectively, because a 1,000 people donating $25 is meaningful. Absolutely, and can do some good work. Absolutely, right? Or 100 people, and so it's throwing in and seeing where it goes. It's asking what are the needs today in the community, and that actually, I spent a lot of time around elders. My father lived to 100, my mother to 95. In the healthcare system, you spend a lot of time with people who are aging. And one of the important criteria for aging successfully and well is community engagement and connection to people. Whether it's, one other person or whether it's a wider community, it's all really important to helping. It helps you as a person, and you help the community. You help the other people you're a part of.
It's a real win-win.
Yeah, big win. It's like we're humans. We're social creatures.
We are social creatures that need connection.
Completely. You see what happens to people who get isolated. It's like the old John Prine song about hello in there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you need to reach out to people because they're in there and you need to pull them up.
Ken, if you could leave our listeners with one message, what would you want to share?
Start. Take the first step. Reach out. Send a donation or go to a community event and just understand and learn and be curious.
Amazing. Ken, thanks so much for joining us.
Very much. Thanks, Nancy.
I really appreciate it.
I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you. And to our listeners out there, thanks for joining us. We look forward to our next episode. And again, listen to what Ken had to say. Go and talk to the foundation. The doors are open, and they're fabulous people that are always wanting to have these conversations that are so meaningful.
Be curious.
Be curious. Yeah, Ted Lasso. Don't be judgmental. Be curious. Between Peaks was produced and edited by Calder Penny at Farside Films. Executive Director Courtney Babott at Widely Open, and music by Arn Smith. A big thank you to the whole Banff Canmore Foundation team. We also want to thank all of our guests, our volunteers, our funders, and every community member.